Hello, and welcome to Season 7 of the FODcast, the podcast focused on the future of digital commerce hosted by Simply Commerce. Season 7 promises to continue to bring you some of the industry's brightest minds across the globe as we unpick the sector and where it's heading. From war stories to strategy and technology deep dives to future trends, we cover it all as we continue our journey to have one of the most popular podcasts in commerce. Before we start, if you enjoy our content, please do hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on, like and share on socials.
Welcome to another edition of the FODcast, and I am very grateful and excited to have with me today Rob Hoekman. Rob is currently Senior Director, Experience Consulting at MP Lab, which is a part of the EPAM brand. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me today. Looking forward to our talk.
Yeah, me too. Plenty to talk about. It would be really good if you could give the audience just a bit of an overview of who you are and your background. Just a bit of context would be great.
Sure. Yeah, my pleasure. So my name's Rob. I'm Dutch, as you might hear from my accent that I try to hide as much as possible. I work at EPAM Systems, which is one of the larger consulting and engineering firms. I am based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, as mentioned, where I am responsible for our global go-to-market on our commerce proposition, which is part of our agency label called Empathy Labs.
Thank you for that. Welcome. It's really good to have you on the show. There's plenty for us to talk about. There's stuff that obviously you and I have spoken about previously, and I'm quite interested to get into some of the detail on this. It'd be good to kick off with, in your view, kind of one sentence, what's exciting you right now about the future of digital commerce? That's what the show is all about. So it'd be good to get your take on that.
Okay, I hope you allow me to have it be a long sentence, because I think there's a lot to be excited about. But if I were to drill it down, I think what excites me most is that shopping is starting to become let's say, seamlessly woven into everyday life. Since the dawn of ecom, which is about 30 years ago, roughly, I think, it has mostly been about data-driven optimization, removing friction for customers, yet still very much focused around the destination or a task or a linear process. And today, I think we see the early signs of ecom turning into an ambient, context-aware experience rather than a separate task. And for me, that is more of an emotional and structural evolution of commerce rather than optimizing it to death.
Okay, so there's a lot there to unpick. There's a lot of buzzwords kicking about within the industry at the moment, and I would suggest we avoid AI as the obvious one.
Yeah.
But from your perspective, what's the most overused buzzword at the moment that you'd happily get rid of?
Yeah, I think there's a lot actually, because many of those, I believe, were born in the paradigm of building a destination and then spinning up tactics to bring people there, keep them there, and get access to their wallets. So, but if I have to pick one, I'd start with omnichannel. I think that's an overused word, rooted in a world where channels were still the primary organizing principle. And I think, without using the word AI, in an agentic distributed future, omnichannel as a concept quietly holds the industry back by implying that channels, and not context or intent or interaction, are still the center of gravity.
And how long have you thought about it from that perspective? Because omnichannel was, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, a massive buzzword, and it was everyone was focusing on their omni-channel offering. How are they going to have these multiple channels to drive customer engagement? So how long have you had that view?
Well, before I answer that, I think a second candidate for me would be customer journeys, and it's very much attached to the concept of omni-channel, because much like thinking in channels, which I think is very much an inside-out view, customer journeys also assume a linear orchestrated path that is designed by the brand. And what we see happening is that reality is nonlinear, is fluid, is intent-driven, and shaped by context, and not funnels. So to come back to your question, we have launched Empathy Lab as a label early 2025, and has been in the making for about a year. So I think, let's say for the last 1.5, 2 years, we've been busy crafting what we think is the front line of the frontier of the future of commerce.
Okay. And Empathy Lab is very, very interesting. And I said this to you when we met. It feels like a really, really intelligent play by EPAM to have that separate brand out there focused purely on that AI piece. But from your perspective, can you tell us a bit more about your path into Empathy Lab and what was the opportunity that you saw personally?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Empathy Lab is a new label from EPAM Systems. And EPAM Systems, I think you could qualify as one of the largest consulting and engineering firms nobody has ever heard of. And that's down to the fact that its heritage is strongly rooted in high quality software engineering. And that historically means that we've also heavily focused on the CTOs, CIOs, and maybe even the CEOs of this world. But that leaves out quite a quadrant of potential customer engagements that are owned by CDOs or CMOs. So for myself, I've been working in digital, I think for the last 20 years or so, mostly on the agency side. And I was working at an agency group that got acquired by EPAM about 4 years ago. I was part of the competency center for ecom, which then got merged into the wider EPAM ecosystem of ecom capabilities and competencies, where I got the opportunity to, from my agency heritage, contribute in the thinking about the propositions for Empathy Lab. And I think that is where a agency heritage comes into play, in a sense that used to be a close-knit, quite heavily vertically integrated agency that blends technology with CX as well as data. And the opportunity for Empathy Lab is to bring this to a global scale.
And you come from an architect background, right?
Yes, I have indeed a master in architecture, building, and planning.
And does that impact or shape how you think about commerce at all?
Yes, it does. It does. On a number of levels, it helps me to think in terms of life cycles, whether those are technical, functional, or economical, but also the rifts between them, as well as the public space. And what we often overlook, I think, is that the internet is actually a public space. So we design for people and communities, their needs, intents, and their complex contexts. And I think over the past decade, what we've seen is that digital technology has been able to unlock unfathomable business value, powering billions and billions of transactions every day. But it has also allowed us to drown in a flood of soulless content in which we suffer from algorithms that encourage our worst selves. So in that sense, my architectural and structural engineering background allows me to think in terms of systems and how they interact with the people that use them day to day.
Okay, it makes sense. So you've applied a lot of that learning into the way you think about the structural roadmaps for the e-com integrations and work you do with the clients.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. And one of the things you said to me when we had our first conversation, I think from memory, was that commerce has been commoditized to death.
Hmm.
And I found that quite interesting. But it'd be good to understand what you really mean by that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think, as I said in my introduction, commerce has been around now, ecom, for roughly 30 years. And I think what has surfaced as the primary paradigm in operating ecom is a hunger to optimize for yield. And that means that almost all ecom outlets starting to follow the same best practices, the same interaction patterns and paradigms, which means that we are at a stage where we're kind of drowning in a sea of sameness. And perhaps it's interesting to attach it to other industries. Take Formula One, for instance. Now that we're near the end of a regulatory era, with a big shift happening for 2026, we see now that almost all cars follow the same best practices in terms of aerodynamics, suspension and brake design, etc., etc. Meaning that the whole field is very close to one another. And I think that's also true for ecom from a platform perspective, but also from a CX perspective.
Okay. That almost leads us into the conversation around digital and that offline space, but we'll get there in a sec because I've still got another question I want to ask you on just around the kind of replacement cycles or upgrade cycles, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I said on a post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago that I think we're entering into the next cycle phase next year. I think you said that these phases are stretching.
Yeah.
It'd be good to know, first of all, do you think I'm right with that? And also, what's driving this? Why have we had that elongated period where no one is doing any or much in the way of upgrading or replatforming?
Yeah. I think you're right, but probably for different reasons than you think. So let me try and unpack it. Indeed, I do think that and this is actually I think part of that larger thinking about commoditization of ecom. We've seen in the past 20 years a few major jumps in capabilities that urged brands and retailers to step up their game in terms of their digital technology powering their ecom. I think the first wave of platforms, early 2000s, like ATG Commerce, IBM WebSphere, etc., were very much product led. So inside out, building upon the capabilities of servicing products. The next wave, roughly 10 years later, actually flipped that idea and focused on experience-led commerce. And it also kind of coincided with the emergence of mature cloud technology. So here you see providers like Salesforce Commerce Cloud, for instance, or Adobe Commerce stepping up the game. That actually came with a caveat in a sense that yes, the operational burden of running these platforms lowered, but at the same time, it did mean that brands and retailers had to basically hand over the keys of their roadmaps to the innovation roadmaps these providers were pushing on their products. And that rift, I think, galvanized the emergence of composable, where the brands and retailers operating their platforms were able to, let's say, take back some of that agency and ownership of the experiences that they wanted to push to their customers. Now, at the same time, under the earlier influences mentioned in terms of the public availability of these best practices and data-driven optimization has led to a convergence of capabilities of all these platforms, which meant that replatforming or moving to a new stack yields a smaller gain than it used to in the past. And at the same time, as customers run longer on their platforms, they've built up a larger body of legacy and customizations, I think, that increases the risk of replatforming. Hence, the decision to upgrade is under scrutiny for a number of reasons. Now, to come back to your question, 2026 we'll see a shift. I think you're right in the sense that a lot of customers or brands or retailers, I should say, realize that in order to be ready for an agentic commerce era, they need to rethink their digital fabric and move more towards the state of running a e-commerce ecosystem rather than a technology platform.
Okay, so that is I would say a much better thought out understanding of why that's going to occur, but we both land on the same position, which is it's going to happen next year.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got legacy issues, we've got complicated integrations, we've got marginal gains. Have I missed anything?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So if we know or we expect retail brands, B2B, B2C, to go through this process next year, how in your view can brands differentiate themselves in the, because that's what we talked about, with such a commoditized, standardized environment. So
yep.
What would you advise clients?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think it ties into the core of that notion of commoditization of the transactional capabilities of these platforms. I think we've optimized on-site flow. We've removed the hassle of online payments, and that's all taken care of. So what we at Empathy Lab now try to focus on is what happens before and what happens after. So pre-purchase and post-purchase. And pre-purchase in that sense means rethinking how to surface our products and services and how to connect it to a customer's intent in a specific context. And at the same time, post-purchase, how can we make sure that the delivery experience is enjoyable, and how can we place hooks that help us retain this customer in our brand's ecosystem?
Okay. I think we can probably, from this position, start to talk about what I thought I'd coined as phygital.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had been very smart and I coined a phrase, but it turns out there's lots of people talking about it already.
It's usually the case with good ideas, right?
Exactly that. So I know how I define it, or how I see it. How are you currently defining that phygital beyond the buzzword element?
Yeah. Okay. Let me start by explaining what I think it's not. And what I think it's not is slapping digital technology into physical stores. So for me, it's not about endless aisle. It's not about kiosks. It's not about smart mirrors.
Is that, sorry to stop you, just so I can, I'm trying to learn a bit here, but is that what you would broadly refer to as retail media?
No, I wouldn't. No.
Okay.
No, I think retail media is emerging as a very viable revenue stream for retailers to monetize safely and securely, of course, the deep knowledge that they've built up of their customers.
Right. Okay. So slightly different. I had a slightly different understanding of it. But sorry, I'll let you carry on with what you think digital is not.
Yeah. So what it's not is is lacing physical stores with digital touchpoints to service the perception that that customers are in, let's say, an omnichannel context. For me, physical would be about blending physical and digital with data as connector into unified experiences that are not about what you sell, but more about how you can make people feel. So instead of endless aisles of products, you could start to think about how technology can help you to provide endless ways on how to make your customers feel recognized, understood, at home, or even elevated. And the other way around, leverage best practices from in-store experiences into your digital engagement layers. So that means, how can we mimic might not be the best word, but elevate the product discovery part of a customer's journey by using proven tactics that we know work in store. And you can think about AR experiences, 3D explosions, elaborate computed product attributes that help make customers informed decisions whether a specific product or service has a utility in the need state that they aim to cover.
Okay. Okay, I've got two questions. The first one is this what you would refer to as ubiquitous commerce?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what's the difference then between ubiquitous commerce and old-fashioned omni-channel?
Yeah, I think it's in the words. Omnichannel still things in terms of these channels that you need to align with one another, perhaps even shape according to what you think a particular customer is in terms of their journey. Whereas ubiquitous commerce, or as we call it, total commerce, is more about how to organize your technology, your data, and your experiences in such a way that you're able to bring those to your customer rather than tempt your customer to come to you, and make them relevant in the moment that they engage with your brand.
Okay, so here's something that's a little bit, it's not off topic, but it's kind of off script, I guess, is the way you've described ubiquitous commerce is about the feeling, the elevation, the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we're simultaneously trying to do is create agentic bots that don't do everything for you. So how do you marry off those two things? Because one is removing the experience and automating it, and one is trying to create and elevate it.
Yeah, I think that's a excellent question, because that dives into the heart of that tension that we see as Empathy Lab as well, and that is, on the one hand, how can we move beyond, let's say, that algorithm-driven sea of sameness that we push towards our customers, and think more about terms of empathy and elevated experiences, whilst at the same time trying to almost anthropomorphize these experiences. So what we see happening a lot is that agents are given a name, are given a personality, as if they are the brand themselves. And I'd rather think of them as intermediates that apply vicious transparency in their reasoning and suggesting towards customers. So think more in terms of probabilities rather than determinism, and take off the veil that has these agents act as if they're human. They're not, and there shouldn't be. So the experiences themselves should not be shaped around that, I think, false premonition.
Okay. So this kind of plays into the next question I was going to ask about products must be legible for both humans and AI, and it's something spoke about previously. So maybe you could dig into that a little bit more. Tell me, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think what we see happening right now is an exploding demand of brands and retailers that display some FOMO in terms of, wait a minute, if commerce is moving upstream to agentic layers that are owned by the large aggregators like Google, OpenAI, Perplexity, etc. They also start to own the conversation with these customers. So how do we make sure that these agents talk about our brand in a way that we would like them to? And that means that we need to surface to the best of our abilities what we have to offer. So we see a lot of clients asking for services in the field of generative experience optimization, or ACO, agentic commerce optimization, that deals with making sure that our products and our services are enriched in such a way that agents can have a holistic view of their utility, regardless of the context a particular customer is acquiring them for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. I think if I try and look at it from a very basic level, when you see agents, agentic AI, engaging with the brand or with the consumer, do you perceive there to be like an agentic AI on the consumer side and one on the brand side, or just on the brand side being pushed out to the consumer? How does that play?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of interaction patterns to unpack there. The most, I wouldn't say the most simple one, but the most early ones right now are agent to site, where these agents are offered by aggregators. Take Perplexity, for instance. OpenAI is building capabilities in the space as well, where these agents communicate with consumers based on data that they have from these brands. Another interaction pattern could be where a consumer interacts with a brand-owned agent. And there's a lot of benefit to unpack there, in the sense that these brand agents, of course, should have a much richer context of a particular customer in terms of previous purchases, of any historical cases, any profile that you've built up of these customers, also in terms of loyalty or membership, that you could enrich that conversation with. A third pattern could be agent to agent, where there's a consumer agent talking to an agent of your brand, which is a bit of an intermediate pattern, because there you would have some increased span of control or agency as a brand over that conversation, but you still do not fully own it.
And the agent to agent conversation seems to me like the furthest away from us getting to.
Mm-hmm.
That there's so many variables around that. No, so obviously understanding that helps. So where do you see AI already making the biggest impact on the CX piece right now, not what's coming right now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two sides of this coin. And this is a personal opinion. I do think that truly agentic commerce, where consumers trust agents with a certain mandate to execute a full transaction, is still quite far away from us. I've seen some exploratory data that tries to model the probability of such a transaction happening, and I think that is less than 0.02%, something like that. If you stack all the elements that need to be in place for a customer to fully trust an agent and be fully capable of executing that transaction within a given context.
Mm.
Now, on the other side, we do see that consumer behavior is shifting quite rapidly, and particularly on the discovery side of things, people start more and more their purchase journeys in agentic environments.
Okay. So, would you be inclined to give me your view on timescales? I think you've kind of used the phrase "some way off."
Yeah, sure. I think it has also a dependency on the maturity of the protocols that are currently in development. And there we see some competing protocols emerge. ACP on the one hand, which I think is pushed forward by OpenAI, very much designed to have early capabilities in place to technically execute that transaction. On the other side of the spectrum, we have Google's AP2 that is more of an holistic view of how an agentic future could look like. And that is thinking about the entire infrastructure of provisioning mandates with certain budgets attached, the reach that these agents are allowed to operate within. I think that is a more solid foundation for agentic commerce that can act within the guardrails that we all need to set up. Timelines, we do see some early experimentation with ACP, so I do expect 2026 will have some major lighthouse cases around early stage agentic commerce. At the same time, I also think that 2026 will see some, say, one or two scandals from major brands in which agents went haywire, customer satisfaction dropped, and the thinking about the entire life cycle of these transactions or purchases falls short when the wrong products have been bought, or a mandate has been overwritten in a sense that, or overspent, I should say. So 2026, I think experimentation with ACP, 2027 and onwards, I think we'll see some mature AP2 cases in specific industries.
Okay, well, perhaps we reconvene at the end of next year and see how you're getting on with that prediction.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah.
Okay, my last question on AI and customer enablement. Do you think the AI-powered data products will drive the next wave of personalization?
Okay, help me understand what you exactly mean by data products. Is this the data you service within your own ecosystem to, for instance, personalize, or are we thinking about more or less digital twins of the products and services that you sell?
I'm thinking about the former.
Okay.
When the things that I've seen from clients is products that sit over their data to help them rationalize, understand, provide clarity to the data. Because what we seem to see is clients have either huge swathes of data that's not particularly well organized or understood, or they have no data and now they're really trying hard to work out how to get it quickly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was coming from with that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So coming back to your earlier question or prediction, maybe even on how 2026 probably will be a year where we'll see quite some substantial re-architecting of commerce fabrics. I think that has a lot to do with the convergence of three major developments. One is on data, one is on experience, and one is on utility. I'll start with the latter. With utility, I mean the maturity of composable platforms, in a sense that has become a lot less cost intensive to build composable API-first platforms. The second, experience. I think we're seeing all across the board a dramatic drop in the costs associated with generating high quality, consistent, personalized content. Of course, much through generative AI capabilities. And the last, data, I think there we see something similar in a sense that the availability of atomic, real-time, granular data products has become an economic feasibility. So if we marry these three, we can surface real-time data in context chunks specific for a particular customer's intent or context. We're able to, or moving towards cost-effectively generating personalized content, and attach those to the APIs and services that a brand is able to provide to bring a utility through a product or service to life for the particular customer.
Okay. And how much further has the cost element got to go on that? You've seen a big drop off in the cost. Is that kind of plateauing now? Or are we going to see that increase?
I think there's still room to optimize, and there's a couple of elements attached. One is that we slowly see specialized models surface. So rather than having foundational large language models churn out this content, whether it's text, video, images, audio, or a mixture of those, specialized cost-effective models can be deployed, lowering the marginal cost of content generation. Secondly, I think it's important to note that personalization for the sake of personalization never is a good idea. So specifically targeting on what part of an engagement with a customer you feel personalizing that interaction makes sense, and should channel your investment in personalization towards is a second lever in lowering that overall cost, I think.
Okay, that does make a lot of sense. In terms of going back to the experience as a differentiator, we've talked about the commoditisation of e-commerce. From your perspective, what would define a great digital experience in 2025?
We're almost at the end of 2025, right? I think let's attach it to the earlier notion I surfaced on the commoditization of the transaction. So I think great experiences should be relevant, real time, in the moment, and contextual. Very much focusing on either pre-purchase or post-purchase, but at the same time also be able, regardless of where a customer is servicing, to transact on the terms the customer is ready for at that particular moment. It doesn't mean for me that you'd overly try to convey brand narrative. I think it should be very much focused on the products and services that you sell. And in that sense, another interesting trend I think to keep track of in 2026 and onwards is, particularly for Europe at least, is early experimentation with digital product passports that are leveraged as a personalization and communication channel.
Interesting. So you would almost like a single sign-on type approach.
I think single sign-on is somewhat of a hygiene factor in that sense. I think when I talk about digital product passports, there's both a push and a pull, and the push I think comes from legislative or regulatory bodies that demand transparency and provenance of the products and services that you sell. And there's also a push from a consumer perspective where customers want to be informed on the origins of their products. They want to better understand if this particular, let's say a running shoe, fits my need to get back in shape, or fits my need to want to run the half marathon of Amsterdam next year. At the same time, it doesn't stop at the transaction. I think these DPPs can continue to collect data on their usage to become somewhat of a journal of the journey that particular product has traveled before you bought it, when you used it, and perhaps even when you decided to resell it or discard it or repurpose it.
Okay. So personalization at scale is quite expensive, can be expensive. And we know that margins are tight. We know that the cost of money is high. So how are you advising, and how do brands currently balance the cost with the potential ROI?
Yeah, I think this this flows back to my earlier remarks on dropping the cost of generative personalization in terms of building trust to rely on smaller specialized models, but also on very specifically trained ML algorithms that you want to deploy. And on top of that, as I said before as well, be razor sharp in where a brand thinks personalization makes sense. And that has, I think, less to do with telling a particular brand story, but more to do about placing a product in a customer's context, making sure that you understand what their preferences are in terms of payment, delivery, and after sales.
Okay. I just had a thought on the product passport, so I'm going to take you back there quickly.
Sure.
You're talking about provenance of products. We're talking about, but conceivably then things like sustainability, carbon footprint, and consumers understanding where their products are coming from, what kind of damage they might be doing to the environment, for example.
Yeah.
If you're having a product passport, is that something that's now more feasible because it's going to leverage blockchain to provide that passport and that unique assignment to an individual or a product? Is that what you're thinking about in that?
Yeah, there are some providers indeed that have blockchain technology at the foundation of their DPP offerings, and it makes sense in a lot of ways. One, of course, it helps to build trust on the quality of the data, as it's immutable and you could also verify its origins. But secondly, and that's maybe even more important from a post-purchase perspective, it can become a shared ledger in a sense that a product can travel from owner to owner, as well as the data, whether it's transactional or on origin or on usage, can travel along with that ownership.
A bit like how we currently track the service history of a car.
For instance, yes.
Yeah, okay. And is the product passport feasible without blockchain?
Yes, it is. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But not fallible, or more fallible.
Well, it's more of an implementation pattern, I'd say, than a particular preference. I do personally believe that blockchain technology will make it a lot easier to make that data passport transferable, as well as let's say become part of a bigger community, maybe even of users and usage of the products that they represent.
Okay. If we go and look at the composable stacks for a sec, from my perspective, they seem to be maturing, and that's happened quite quickly.
Yeah.
What's been driving the adoption, in your view?
I think mostly what I've mentioned before. Let's say if we go back 10, 12 years in the era of experience-led platforms that were trying to deliver turnkey solutions, connecting the ecom platform with the experience layer in one package, meant that as a brand or retailer, you're also handing the keys of your own roadmap to the innovation roadmap of these providers. And that led to that digital sea of sameness mentioned earlier as well. So there's a big drive to differentiate, also because these platforms turned out to have rather high TCOs, and shaping your commerce fabric exactly around the needs you think you need to surface made a lot of sense. Now for 2026 and onwards, I truly believe that agentic will be an accelerator for composable adoption, as you're handing over an important layer of your stack to these aggregators. And that means that you effectively need to turn your own organization inside out to make sure that agents are able to grasp not only your brand, but your products, your services, your service levels in such a way that they can act as intermediates between you and your end consumers.
Okay, in your experience, are businesses actually ready to go through that, restructure their teams in order to be able to fully unlock the benefits of the work they're going to undertake? Yeah,
I think from my experience, that is the biggest blocker moving forward. I guess it ties a bit into Conway's law, in a sense that any organization that is designing a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. And these structures, I think, are still very much grounded in linear thinking. And composable, or rather building the digital commerce ecosystem, requires you to think about what capabilities do you need to service where, how to capture that intent and provide the ability to transact. So the operating model needs a thorough overhaul as well, blending both from a horizontal and a vertical perspective these capabilities. For instance, fulfillment options can become a crucial factor in determining during discovery for a customer whether or not they would even consider that product. So I guess these operating models would need to organize more around intent rather than journey phase. So I think, for instance, in terms of we'd have a search team, we'd have a checkout team, regardless of the channel, instead of a web store team, we have an in-store team, etc.
Okay. And on the note of channels, I'm going to finish off with this question because it's something that I'm really interested to get your view on. We've seen social and live commerce to varying degrees, depending on which country.
Yeah.
There's still people that are talking about it as the future, and we've had plenty of different channels come to market that have been the future that have not worked out as anticipated.
Yeah.
What's the view on social and live commerce?
Yeah, I think at least for Europe, it's at the moment pretty close to a graveyard of other great initiatives of commerce innovations that didn't make it. Think about metaverse commerce. Think about IoT commerce or TV commerce. However, if we look more towards the east, in China or Southeast Asia, social commerce and live commerce has become mainstream. So I think it's very much a concern of cultural adoption rather than technical feasibility. And I think what is a red thread across all these innovations I mentioned is that, yes, the technology was there, but the human need was overlooked. So adoption, I think, still has a long way to go for Europe. And a large enabler for that, I think, would be to think more in terms of product market fit. So some categories obviously fit social live commerce much better than others. And that means also that brands and influencers need to think about how to build trust on these platforms. And I think there we all could benefit from standards and regulations that might help establish that base level of trust.
Okay. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, go ahead. But ultimately, I think in the end, when it becomes just as reliable as shopping through an app or a mobile site, traction will pick up, and ideally, it will become a more entertaining version of shopping.
So in your view, for this to become mainstream, it's product market fit and then the whole product passports piece playing into that.
That could be an important enabler, yeah. But also the audiences that you want to target. So I think there's quite a difference to be seen between the success of TikTok versus Instagram, for instance, whereas Instagram effectively departed again from social commerce a bit, whereas TikTok, I think, is seeing revenue in the billions at the moment.
Okay, and I don't use TikTok, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what the consumer view is on why that is the case. What's your view on why TikTok has had the success that Instagram has failed? So...
Yeah, I'm not a TikTok user myself either. I guess we're a bit too old for that, Tim. But perhaps that's part of the answer. I think there's different audiences that are using these channels with different expectations as well. The second thing, when thinking about social commerce and its success on TikTok, is that the products being sold there are very much impulse driven, trend sensitive, and fast shipping SKUs that gravitate around certain price points that are easy to consume as an impulse buy.
Okay, makes sense, and it would explain why I'm not on TikTok, or I'm not understanding why TikTok is successful, because it's definitely not aimed at me.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to jump on anytime soon. I don't need another reason to be on my phone, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So we're going to finish on that. It's been a really, really interesting conversation, and actually, I've come away learning a few things. So it's really appreciated. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we can do it again, and we can review the predictions that we made in 2025 sometime at the back end of next year.
Yes, that sounds like an excellent plan. That's it. My pleasure, and thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Thanks for coming on the show. Cheers, Rob.
Cool. Thanks. Bye-bye.